In my view, and as some articles have already been exploring in scholarly literature, global culture is an undefined term. So one can think of it as a conjunction of globalization and culture. At the same time, how that can be translated into something understandable remains unclear. On the one hand, globalization has been, in the last 30 years, a Western-led phenomenon under the aegis of the global institutions such as World Bank, such as the International Monetary Fund, such as maybe the United Nations. At the same time as other non-Western countries are continuing their economic rise, their weight in the global affairs also increases, also grows. This poses challenges to the Western-centric interpretation of globalization as such. On the other hand, culture has always been a phenomenon which didn't have a single sort of definition. There has never been a single idea of what it is theoretically, so that when one combines globalization and culture, one obtains a hybrid phenomenon, and I think it is important to reflect on it right now in the present moment as something that can be approached from multiple points of view, and some academic sources can give us insights on what the key points for reflection can be and what can be the implications of this. And it seems that in a single session, in a single chain or train of thought, one cannot necessarily encompass all of that. So it seems that at the present moment, one of the more prominent examples of global culture can be Netflix, such as the series from South Korea, which become globally successful. For instance, the Squid Game in recent decades, or maybe one can think about the reception of European culture elsewhere, such as in Asia, or social media landscape, which is not necessarily any longer dominated by only the Western platforms. And once again, it seems that with the certain limitation on the role that global institutions, which have been championed and created in the West, become a reality, there becomes or also opens a space for the renegotiation of what global culture can be and how it can be interpreted in terms of that go beyond the Eurocentric terms. And then the question becomes, how does one start criticizing the Eurocentric notions of culture or global culture or globalization for that matter, and how can one approach what is going on between nations, between cultures, between different large-scale processes, in terms of that go beyond only maybe or Western perspective or a non-Western perspective, and then how one actually translates that from one context into the other, not only in terms of the language itself, but also in terms of the notions that one uses for that. So that it seems that sociology can be one of those toolkits or discourses or points of view that can be useful in that aspect. For instance, George Ritzer, who is an American sociologist who has been famous for the notion of mega-Donaldization of the world. And it seems that this approach is not necessarily explored enough in this respect. I think that global culture has been driven by the standardization of culture to a large extent. For instance, Netflix uses a certain format in terms of series composed of episodes, and some of the mechanisms, some of the structures, economic mechanisms, such as subscriptions, and then pricing structures, and then ways to monetize the content. And I think that a lot of the component pieces of global culture as it exists on the ground, as it exists in the daily life, are driven by the phenomenon of the McDonaldization, which we can think of whenever we see a global chain of maybe coffee shops, or whenever we see a global chain of, say, fashion. It all is based on very standardized processes and something that has been optimized in terms of the efficiency, in terms of the message, in terms of how does one sell a certain product, whether it be a physical product or a service or something immaterial for that matter. And I think that the implications of that remain unexplored sufficiently. Once again, everybody knows global brands, and I think McDonald's is one of the more widely spread around the world. It stands for global economy, but I think that the implications of that could be less obvious, and it seems that one only begins to think of what will be happening if rival chains will be applying same recipes and becoming competitive, either in price or in quality or in cultural appeal. In other words, when we were living essentially in a Western-dominated world in the 1990s and maybe early 2000s, then from that point on it becomes unclear how to think of the world when it no longer is dominated by the West, when there are probably alternatives or challenging countries, challenging blocks. How does that translate into the global culture terms? How does it actually translate into preferences? In other words, it could be maybe Turkish series becoming more popular around the world. It could be maybe Asian food gaining more traction, let's say, in small shops around the world. Things of this type, and whether that also translates into other aspects, or whether it is actually affected by other phenomena, remains something to explore by and large, and it can be something to reflect upon and to bring to bear maybe various phenomena, various theoretical tools to what is going in the present moment. And it seems to be that there can be a growing need to maybe unthink Eurocentric notions, and then to learn how to think of the global culture in ways that actually bring a balanced approach to what one can find in the bookstores, to what one can find in the social media, to what one can find on the internet, while offering some insights of what could be the implications, what could be the global trends that one can expect to rise out of that.